In a world of endless doom scrolling, Screenverse makes sure brands show up beyond the feed, delivering moments that you can't swipe past. With over 130,000 screens across bars, retail, residential, and more, Screenverse gives brands direct access to high-impact, real-world media at scale. One partner, massive reach, full transparency, and measurable results. Bring your brand to the physical world at screenversemedia.com.
Everybody, and welcome to Cannesversations Confessionals. I'm your host, Stephanie Beach, and I have a special guest today, Jess Jordan from Tripadvisor. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. So I'm really excited. We're at this beautiful women's brunch, and I have some really fun questions for you. You ready to dive in?
Let's do it.
Awesome. So being at CES, it's a technology show. There's so many things happening and so much going on. Which ad tech trend do you think will actually redefine our industry as opposed to just being hyped up?
It's interesting. I think a couple years ago, everybody thought the metaverse was going to be the thing. I think what we all know is that AI is here to stay. I think whether it be from productivity automation, increasing efficiency for teams, a production tool, the applications feel endless. And so I think for us, that's something that we see. It's really kind of changing the way we approach our day to day and the solutions we can create for our clients.
I love that. And I think that that's, a really good thing. I think while AI is such a big topic, it's really relevant. And I think the fact that we're seeing outcomes and real use cases as opposed to just a typical LLM and putting in change this email for me or whatever is really impactful and is changing the way that our industry is actually functioning. And not just making our jobs easier,
Yeah, and I think you hit on something, it's really the quality of the input. And as we change our brains to maybe think in a different way and embrace this tool with both hands, I think that that's something that's increasingly important as to, how do we make AI adapt and work harder for us versus just relying on it as, a one-way solution.
Yeah. How is AI changing the way that we plan and book travel?
Oh my goodness. I feel like, for us at Tripadvisor, we have, really kind of put our stake in the ground as wanting AI to really, help move travel forward, make people more confident travelers. That's really the reason of why we do what we do, is so that everyone can come to the site and make sure that they feel confident, that their money is going to be well spent and the experience is going to be something that's really worthwhile for them. And AI is a vital tool in helping that personalization and customization and discovery. I think it's a really helpful discovery tool of taking other elements of travel. How do you want to feel? Who are you traveling with? What is your, kind of trip profile? We find AI is a really useful tool to help people discover places maybe they wouldn't have gone to or thought of before.
That's really truthful. And I think that AI could help, narrow things down on where you should go for your family versus a romantic getaway versus, and really utilize those inputs more strategically to give a better outcome.
Yeah, and I feel, obviously a lot of companies are using AI in different ways, but for us, it feels like a really next and natural place for trip planning and guidance to go. So I'm really happy just from a product standpoint of how we've, we're really leaning into this space and trying to remain a category leader there.
Yeah, I love that. So, being a woman in leadership and being at this beautiful women's brunch now, if you were sitting across from a young woman starting her first day in digital media, what would be a piece of advice that you would give her to help her find her voice in the room?
I love this question because I think about it a lot, with my team. And I think the thing that I've benefited from in this industry is really finding people that you want to emulate, that you want to understand how they got to where they are or how they think about, empowering other people and really paying it forward. I think, creating a community as early as you can and really leaning into that community, finding confidence through that community and advocates. I think, there's obviously mentors, but I think that there's also facilitators and really empowering women to not be afraid to use their voice, to really be generous with their time. I think that goes upwards and downwards as well.
Yeah.
Again, I think the community aspect and finding that as quick as you can is really, really key.
I agree. I think, finding your tribe, so to speak, and your hype people that are there to just help you makes such a difference. We're our own worst critics, right? And we're always so hard on ourselves. And so I feel having having that sometimes keeps you grounded and like reminds you of like the badass you could really be, you know?
And I think also, opportunities like this of meeting women that, are in a similar environment, but maybe have a different function to you. And so many of the struggles that we have are shared. We found that in our conversation this morning, we all came from very different backgrounds, but we shared, I'm stepping into a new role and how do I make a mark on my team? I'm starting the year fresh. Like, how do I come with, the strategic vision and how do I articulate that? So I think it's really important to get out of the vacuum that sometimes we put ourselves in, and opportunities in environments like this, I think, help us do that.
And so as a woman leading, in a technical and a fast-paced environment, what's an unspoken skill you found to be essential for navigating the industry successfully, or something maybe you developed over your career?
Sure. For me, I think it really is an old adage, but that you get more bees with honey than vinegar. I think, sometimes women fall under the trap of thinking that they have to really emulate that, masculine, aggressive energy to be effective. And I think when you can really get close to that identity and what makes you you and what makes you effective and how do you do business that is creative and respectful and, uplifting to other people, I think it's really being true to yourself and kind of understanding your style. And I think the earlier that you can do that, and again, kind of going back to what I said about finding the people that you want to emulate, I think that's really, really important. So when you find someone who does it well, imprint that on your mind. How do you adapt that for your own personal style and really lean into that?
Yeah. And, speaking about this brunch and community as well, having a network of women, like we said, is invaluable. It's huge. How has that community that you have really helped you during your journey and shaped your career to get you to where you are now?
I think for me, the biggest thing is just the kind of my go-to gals of like, who am I calling when I have an issue with a coworker or, one of my direct reports that I can't quite figure out? I think when I'm evaluating new job opportunities or I'm really trying to figure out how do I navigate a tricky situation, I think, having people in your corner who you respect, who have been there before and done it themselves, or just offer you that challenge. And I think that's also a really important aspect of not just surrounding yourself with yes people. It's people that push you to think differently, that ask you tough questions, make you maybe confront where you staying too comfortable, where do you need to get out of that comfort zone. And so for me, I think different people serve different functions. We all have kind of those work BFFs or, who become real BFFs, your work wives. I think again, we put so much of it on our family, but I think the community that you create in a professional environment can serve so many really invaluable needs.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I really love the points that you said and just being able to surround yourself with those people that push you to do better, that challenge you. I even personally, I tell people, I'm not the friend that's just going to tell you
Absolutely,
what you want to hear. And I'm totally fine with you venting and not giving my opinion. But if you're asking for my opinion, you better make sure
Absolutely.
you want it.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to lie to you. What justice am I doing if I'm not telling you the truth as a friend?
Yeah. And I don't think there's anything more caring than honesty. And I think, again, when you really genuinely care about people's well-being, you want the best for them. And that may not always come in the most comfortable of packages. And I think, doing that with empathy and doing that with honesty is really key. And it just allows you to walk through life as a person with integrity, which I think, at the end of the day, what else do we have then?
Exactly. So. What else do you have? And so, that's a great segue into the next question, because aside from having industry people, right, who is someone in your personal orbit that maybe the world doesn't know about that is continuously pushing you to do better and be better?
I feel like this is probably a cheesy answer, but my dad, in all honesty, he was, worked for Motorola for 40 years in a sales capacity. So he's really been around the block and seen a lot. And so I think, when I'm posed with a challenge, he's going to give me advice that is, to your point, very honest, very direct, and sometimes confronting, but that's what you need. And I think he does a great job of putting on his dad hat, but also putting on his professional hat. So, whenever I seek counsel, he's usually my go-to. Do I always listen? Not necessarily, but I think I really value his experience and the way that he's navigated through his own career.
That's great. And I love that. And I think that especially his background is very similar to what you're doing now too, right? So I'm sure he has some invaluable advice over the years that he could definitely share. So that's really nice. All right. We just have one more question. And then we'll dive into some rapid fire. So what is one piece of advice from another female mentor that you find yourself paying forward often?
For me, the idea of being comfortable taking up space has been invaluable to me. I've had, the fortune of working with some really dynamic, really smart, really effective leaders. And I think, sometimes as women, it's hard for us to want to show up in a big way. We don't want to be intimidating. We don't want to come across as abrasive. And I think being able to channel that in a way where you don't see that as a negative, I think that taking up space for me is something that I talk about with my team all the time. You've done the work, you have the knowledge, you have a right to have a voice in this room. And I think for me, that's been really key in figuring out how do I effectively use that voice to, lift up people around me and, whether that be a direct report, a colleague, a friend. I just think there's a lot of value when you can get close to that.
I agree. And I think that that's so nice. So rapid fire.
Okay.
I got 3 quick questions. You ready?
Yeah.
One app you can't live without.
Time shifter.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
I don't even know what that one is.
It's a jet lag app, which every time we're meeting with clients, we talk about it. But if you do a lot of travel, you move across time zone, it basically gives you a detailed plan as to how you get on local time faster. And it has saved me in many a, coast to coast or bicontinental travel situation.
That's really cool. Your power song before a big meeting or presentation.
Say Close to You by Gracie Abrams.
Ooh, okay. And LinkedIn or Instagram for networking?
I'd say LinkedIn. I still keep them separate, but I would say, for me, LinkedIn at this point.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This was so fun.
Yeah,
I really
thank you.
appreciate it. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Tune in next time, guys. Thanks.